Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidil Mursaleen wa alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. All praises are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be constantly showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. As to what follows, to our brothers and sisters, our viewers, our friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the gift of life. And we pray that Allah would enable us to be able to understand his message, to share his message, and to act upon what we have learned. We are looking at a very important topic, and that is pivotal moments in Islamic history where things went from darkness into light, where Muslims were able to make amazing achievements, to call to the good, to forbid evil. And we have looked at these moments from the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, through his companions, and through the great male and female Muslims who have risen up in every nation and every tribe. And we have to remember, when we look at pivotal moments in the Muslim world, Islam is perfect in itself. But we have to remember that Islam traveled to different parts of the world and every nation and every tribe. And Allah tells us in Surah An-Nahl, verse 36, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, wa laqad ba'athna fi kulli ummatin rasula an i'budullaha wajtanibu at-taghut. And we certainly sent into every nation a messenger saying, worship Allah and avoid false deities. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ هَدَى اللَّهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ حَقَّتْ عَلَيْهِ الضَّلَالَةُ. And of the people were some who Allah guided, and of them were those upon whom error was decreed. So travel in the earth, فَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Travel in the earth and see what was the end of those who denied the truth. And so prophets came to China, to India, to Africa, to Europe, to the Americas, to every nation and every tribe. Somebody was teaching them about the worship of one God, creator of the heavens and the earth. And that is the essence of the theme of Islam. It is not a Semitic religion. It is not an Arab religion. It is not an Eastern religion, but it is a religion of all of humanity, perfected by the creator of the heavens and the earth. And the monotheism, a tawheed, which is the basis of the Islamic message, could be divided into three parts. Tawheed is a deep concept, and that is wahada yuwahidu, and that is to unite, to bring things together. And of course, the essence of Tawheed in Islam is the oneness of our understanding of the Creator, that we worship one God with no partners, no rivals. Laysa kamithlihi shay. There is nothing similar to Allah. And that is what generally is known by Tawheed. But there's another part to it, and that is that we are one human family. So Islam came not to divide us, not to make the rich more powerful than the poor, or to make a chosen people, but to unite humanity as one family. The third part is that there is one source of knowledge, that all knowledge comes from Allah Azza wa Jal, whether it be sacred knowledge or secular knowledge, because some people want to divide up what came in the books, the heavenly books. They want to divide that from science, as though there's a difference. But Tawheed came to teach the Muslims that it's all coming from the same source. Allah made systems in the world. Allah made the creation in such a way that it could sustain itself and that it would be a source of wonder for human beings to the day of resurrection. And in Surah Al-Mujadala, Allah tells us Allah will exalt those of you who believe and those of you who are given knowledge. High degrees. Allah will raise you high degrees, and Allah is well aware of all that you do. So those who utul ilm, those who have knowledge, Allah will give them a high place. And so knowledge was always put on a high level for the Muslims, and all of us would seek it. And the Prophet ﷺ even said in one tradition that you should seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. In other words, your whole life, you should be seeking knowledge. And the ulama, the scholars would tell us that if somebody says, I know, or I am a scholar, then that means he has become jahil. He's ignorant. Because the only one with perfect knowledge is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the seeking of knowledge was part of the message. Islam is not a military system. It is not a conquest religion, but it is based upon understanding the creation, flowing with the creation, seeking more of the knowledge that Allah has put into all different aspects of the universe. And with this in mind, with the message coming out in the 7th century, this is the final message of Islam, of course. We believe that Islam was already there, but the final form, the seal, coming in the Quran, that this was special because it gave the Muslims a type of flexibility, a type of open-mindedness. And that was strange in the 7th century because the different societies in the world, the backwardness that had struck the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire, the different ethnic groups and linguistic groups, everybody was locked in their own corner. But Muslims had open minds because they taught that all knowledge comes from Allah. And they began to assemble the writings. Now, as they're going to different parts of the world, not with huge conquering armies, they had small armies. They were calling to the good and forbidding evil. They were usually responding to an attack. And they reached the knowledge of the ancient Egyptians, whose knowledge went back thousands of years. Ancient Indians, Syrians, Persians, Greeks, other people, and they started to bring this together. And so it was in this time period, you could say, was the golden age of Islamic knowledge. This is really when the Muslims took full advantage of the freshness of their faith and also encountering other societies and other ways of life. So arbitrarily, we'll say from 1622 to around 1492, I'm just using these dates as sort of barriers for us or limits. This, you could say, was the Islamic golden age of knowledge. But the cover-up, what we are not made aware of, is the fact that Europe, that had been advanced heavily during the Roman Empire, no doubt about it. This was the largest empire in recorded history at that time. They had gathered together scientists from different parts of the world. But Europe fell. The Romans became corrupted and they fell. And their society became corrupted. And so between 400 to say 1500 or so, this is what the Europeans called the Dark Ages, because the lights went out in Europe. The problem is that when you get a Western-oriented Eurocentric history book, it's teaching you that during this time period, nothing was happening, that literally knowledge was stuck in monasteries, and the rest of the world was in a state of darkness until the Renaissance came, which is the rebirth of knowledge. This is a cover-up. There was a pivotal moment during the golden age of Islam that we want to look at, because we've been looking at pivotal moments in the sense that Muslims were under attack. They suffered, and a hero came. And a group of people stood up. And there was a major change in Islamic society. These have been the pivotal points that we've looked at to a great extent. But this time, the pivotal point has nothing to do with warfare or politics. This is knowledge. It's a pivotal point in knowledge. Because the Arabs at the time were not distinguished for their science, for their math, for their physics. They were not distinguished for this. They were distinguished for their language, because Arabic language is a very complicated language. And they took pride in their poetry and their literary expression. But they were not well known for scientific achievements. And then Islam began to move out. And it started to encounter people who had been solidified in knowledge, secular knowledge. And they had made achievements, but they were backward spiritually. And so the two came together. And it was within the 9th to the 11th centuries. So this is our pivotal moment. We're stretching moment a little bit. It's a pivotal period, especially with the establishment of Bayt al-Hikma. And I want to use this as a focal point. There were different parts of the Muslim world where the believers were able to raise up in knowledge. But this particular achievement, this particular pivot in Baghdad, in the Abbasid Khilafate, you could say it really changed the course of history, not only for the Muslims, but it changed the course for the whole planet. What happened during that time? It was in this time that the House of Wisdom was established and that the Muslims were able to develop so many things. They developed the scientific method and perfected it. And they took the theories of the ancient ones and made precise experiments. So this is what today's science looks at in terms of experimentation and going from a lower level to a higher level. Bayt al-Hikma, this was an important place. And it was in the Abbasid period. Remember, knowledge coming in from different parts of the world, that many foreign works were translated into Arabic, especially from Greek, Chinese, Sanskrit, Persian, Syriac, other languages as well. It was like a translation movement. You can see on the right side an Arabic texts. And normally you see Arabic and you think it's hadith or tafsir or Quran. No, this is dealing with science. Okay? And it is during the reign of the Khalifa of the Abbasids, Harun al-Rashid. And Harun al-Rashid is probably the greatest of the Abbasid rulers. That he took personal interest in scholarship. And at that time, Baghdad was the center of the middle world. Muslims had reached the far ends of the known world at the time, and so much tribute and trade was coming into Baghdad. It was one of the wealthiest places on the face of the planet Earth. So now you have a leader who's interested in scholarship, he's interested in poetry, and he's got vast amount of wealth. And so they start translating things. Get the knowledge of the Greeks, get the knowledge of the Egyptians, the knowledge of India, get the knowledge of Africa. Bring it all together, translate it into Arabic so we can understand it, and let's use it in a modern way. The next Khalifa following this was the Khalifa Ma'mun, and he ruled from around 813 to 833. So he gave special help or assistance to this House of Wisdom. And he loved science. And no doubt about it, he was in need of science. because Baghdad was one of the wonders of the world, and there was so many different levels of society. They needed architecture, they needed waterways, they needed agriculture, they needed understandings of the world. And so he used the money of the Abbasids to develop the House of Wisdom. And it is reported also that even business people got involved in this, merchants got involved, even the military was actually involved. So when you have a society like this that is focusing on knowledge, it's a pivot. It's going to take the world in a total different direction now, because so much is being put in other parts of the world. They're just trying to eat food. They're just trying to survive, or they're using their wealth for conquest. In this case, it is the love of knowledge. And the books of the ancient ones were considered to be so valuable that in some cases the person would bring a book and he would get the weight of that book in gold. And so they were able to make so many different achievements. And it is even reported that in one of the treaties between the Abbasids and the Romans, that, as part of the tribute that was being paid by the Romans, the Muslims wanted al-Magest, they wanted a book. So as part of the tribute, you give us your science books. Okay, so it's not just gold and silver and things. They wanted knowledge. And so this is unique. This is a unique pivot point. And this Bayt al-Hikma in Baghdad. Baghdad was one of the wonders of the world. Look how beautiful the artist's conception makes Baghdad. And the scholars there were multidisciplinary in a sense that they were masters of Arabic and Quran, and they knew their Islamic sciences, but they also knew sometimes they would be engineers, architects. They could also be doctors. So they were involved in construction programs. They developed precise calendars. They were public servants, consultants. And so that's the kind of flexibility that you need to develop a wonder city that was giving so much to the world at that time. And the Khalifa, for instance, and this is this famous book, Al-Magest, he commissioned the mapping of the world, the confirmation of data from Al-Magest, and the deduction of the real size of the earth. So this now is probably the first time they're trying to find out the real size of the earth. Think about this. This is not the Dark Ages. Europeans had no clue about the real size of the earth. But the Muslims, because of the reach of the Abbasids and because of the wealth that they were putting in the science, they were deducting the real size of the earth and came very close to what we scientifically have today. He also promoted Egyptology. And this is an interesting subject which I myself went into very deeply, and that is the knowledge of the ancient Egyptians. Because people, when they think of ancient Egypt, you think of Pharaoh, you think of the pharaohs, and they were just idol worshippers and that's it. No. Egypt was united in 3200 BC. So this is like over 2,000 years before Musa alayhi salam. Egypt was united, and the pyramids, the major pyramid at Giza was built, the Saqqara temple even before that. And the Egyptians were doing amazing things. 2,300,000 blocks of granite are put into one building. Some of the blocks are 20 tons. How could you get something like this? Where did the science come from? How are you able to bring it up from Aswan north and then put it in place? And don't tell me it was aliens. Don't tell me it was jinni. It was done by human beings using their God-given talents. Ma'mun was so open-minded, and the Bayt al-Hikma, they wanted wisdom from everywhere, that they actually did excavations at the pyramids of Giza because they wanted to know what was the knowledge of the ancient Egyptians. He built the first astronomical observatories in Baghdad. He was also the first ruler to fund and monitor the progress of major research projects involving teams of scholars and scientists. So he's funding these projects. And you could say that he was the first ruler to fund big science. So this is major scientific projects. This is what the West has taken the lead in the world today. That's why China's coming up on them, because the Chinese are investing in knowledge. The Chinese are involved in experimentation. And so they're rising now in the world. At that time, this was a pivot point for the Muslims and the whole of the planet Earth at that time. And so Ma'mun and his people, they were so busy in this that he even sent out expeditions of scholars from Bayt al-Hikma seeking knowledge. Think about this. Not out in jihad like you are told, Muslims with curved swords who are chopping off people's heads. No. He sent out expeditions seeking knowledge. So they would go to the great centers of the world and they would collect textbooks. They would seek knowledge from foreign lands. And one of the directors of Bayt al-Hikma was sent to Constantinople, which is now Istanbul, specifically because this was one of the major cities on the face of the planet Earth. This is a picture you can see, an actual picture on the right side, is the Muslim Khalifa. On the left side is the Roman king, and they're exchanging books, not exchanging arrows and swords. They're exchanging knowledge. And because the Muslims had this flexibility and had this desire, it was an amazing time to live in. And so by the second half of the 9th century, Bayt al-Hikma was the greatest repository of books in the world. And it became one of the greatest hubs of intellectual activity in the medieval time. Look at the world today. You have London, you have Paris, you have the great centers of European knowledge, and now you have China coming up. Okay, at this time, more books in this center than anywhere else on Earth. And this is not magic. You can see it. It's based upon the real achievements and striving of the Muslims at that time. And so they attracted brilliant scholars to Baghdad. They didn't have the university system as we know the university system today, but it was an ordered, organized approach to knowledge and to science, and it was results-oriented. Okay, so this is key point in the level that they reached. I want to give you an example. And you can see a text here on the right side. That's how their Arabic text, would look. And Ma'mun was in need of problem solving because inheritance is the division of your wealth, 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16. You also had land that needed to be divided. You had great finances, zakat. So now your zakat is being given 2.5% of your wealth. How do you divide? How do you know what 2.5% of your wealth is? Construction, agriculture, navigation, booty distribution. And so he needed fractions. So you need 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, a science of fractions. And so he went to his one of his great scientists, again, they were all around people, al-Khwarizmi, and asked him, put together something for us. So al-Khwarizmi did his major work, Kitab al-Muqtasa fi Hisab al-Jaba wal-Muqabala. And you can see the Arabic, reading it for you. Kitab al-Muqtasa, right? So this is an abbreviated book, fi Hisab al-Jabar, on calculation by completion and balancing. Okay? So now you can do your calculations now. Al-Jabr. Algebra. This is where the word algebra comes from. It's an Arabic word. How many people in the world today studying their math and their sciences know that algebra actually was an Arabic word coming from al-Khwarizmi, who was not originally Arabic, the person speaking Persian? How many people knew this? This is what was happening there. In medicine, Hunayn wrote an important treatise on ophthalmology. Other scholars were writing on smallpox, infections, surgery. Okay, and so many of these textbooks that at this pivot point were being written were later used by Europe in its Renaissance. So the Renaissance from the Dark Ages into the rebirth did not come by magic. It came through the striving of the Muslims who were putting together the knowledge of the world at that time. And you can see in this picture an actual drawing of an examination being done, because surgery was being done on people. And in this case, it's like a tumor, being taken out the neck of a person. And you can see some of the tools that they're using. And it's amazing because some of their instruments, like these instruments here of al-Zahrawi, right? These instruments were being used during this time period for surgery. Look at the shapes. And some of these instruments are still being used basically today because the shapes were so precise in terms of getting through corners, going into the body, and being used for surgery. Another shocking bit of information is that during this time, Abu Ali al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, he develops what he called qamara. So he's using light and reflections, and that is the first camera. So he literally was reflecting pictures of people and things. And it was called qamara, and we're still using it up until today. That's your camera. Okay? And so amazing developments happening during that time. Just to give you a basic idea of sciences developed by Muslims in this pivotal point in our history. Algebra, of course, anesthesia, biology, botany, cardiology, chemistry from alchemia, dermatology, embryology, emergency medicine, geology, metallurgy, modern surgery, modern medicine, modern arithmetic, optics, parasitology, pharmacology, pulmonary medicine, toxicology, urology. This is a university. It's literally a university. These are developed by the Muslim during this time, in this pivotal time for the planet in terms of its understanding of the sciences of the world. And these are some of the substances and devices that were introduced into Europe during this time. Pendulums, cotton, paper, came from Chinese, but there was papyrus in Egypt as well. Muslim introduced it. Glass, mirrors, crystal, street lamps, colored glass, satin, pepper, paper money, postage stamps, book binding, clocks, soap, astrolabes, compasses, slide rules, flasks, surgical instruments, windmills, artificial teeth, very crucial for many of us. Spinning wheels for textiles, globes, citrus fruits, eyeglasses. Imagine this. Porcelain, gunpowder, cables, velvet, almanacs. Almanac is from the word almanach, which is an Arabic word. That's what we had before Google. You had almanacs and encyclopedias, right? Muslim developed that, putting all types of knowledge together where you'd have it, at your fingertips. Saddles and leather shoes. This is just some of the substance. It's an amazing study to see how Muslim revolutionized civilization in this world. In the 1930s, Walt Taylor recorded approximately 1,000 English words of Arabic origin. Some of these words are as follows. Admiral, which is Amir al-Baha. Think about this. Al-Kuhl, which is alcohol. Al-Qubba, alcove. Al-Jabba, algebra. Al-Khwarizmi, algorithms. See your algorithms today that you're freaking out about, what your algorithm doing to you. That comes from a Muslim name. How many people in Silicon Valley know this? How many people who are looking at their phone, that algorithm that's chasing you around and destroying your life? It originally came out of Muslim thinking and then was distorted. Amber, arsenal, which comes from Dar es-Sinaa, assassin. Now that sounds like Muslims, right? It comes from Hashashin. Caliber from Qalib. Camphor is Carrefour. Your check, right? Your Bank of Montreal. Your Bank of London. Bank of America. Check. SEC. It's an Arabic word. Chemistry is from alchemia. Cotton, you have qutun. Lemon is from lemun. Magazine, like your Time magazine, Maclean's magazine, makhazin. Mattress is from matrah. Monsoons is from mausim. Sugar, sukar. Syrup is your sharab. Typhoon is your tufan. And zero is sifr. And you can go on in this amazing study of Muslims who had beards and turbans and, scarves on, hijab, right? Making amazing stuff. One of the astounding achievements was the development of the magnetic needle. Okay, so this led to the first true compass. Now, compasses now, especially on the boats traveling in the earth, it revolutionized travel. First true compass developed by Muslims. Some other contributions for those who are into math: popularization of Arabic numerals. You're counting zero, sifar, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It came out of India, but the Muslims put it together in a usable form now. Okay, Arabicized it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is Arabic numerals. Okay, a logarithm from Khwarizmi, non-Euclidean geometry, the development of trigonometry and the first use of sine and cosine, spherical trigonometry, and trigonometry of tangents. Amazing achievements. But let's take it a step further. What is one of the most visible achievements in science? That is, we're flying all around the world, which people would think it is the jinn that are flying around. How can human beings fly? Only birds can do that. But in the 9th century, a genius, Abbas ibn Firnas of Cordoba in Spain, Al-Andalus. He was a poet, an astronomer, an engineer. At 70 years old, he designed a flying machine and went up to the Jabal Arus, and he tried to fly, and he flew for a period of time, and something looking something like this. He also cut crystals, he produced glass, He made a planetarium with thunder and lightning inside of it. Imagine, 9th century. Okay, that's 800s. Abdurrahman ibn Muhammad ibn Khaldun, very famous Tunisian scholar. He was a judge, diplomat, economist, philosopher, and you could say he was the father of sociology because he looked at history not just for the names and the dates. What is the relationship of the peoples involved? You see, so he was able to develop this type of looking at society, how we relate, and his foundations are the basis of modern day sociology. But the Europeans wanting to take credit for the Renaissance, how could you continue to hold your head up when there's so much that the Muslims actually did and you wanted to make them your enemies because the Europeans at that time launched crusades. They went into the Muslim world to conquer the Muslim world. So they launched crusades. So how can your enemy be the one who taught you? So they start changing names. So instead of Ibn Rushd, they say Averroes. Instead of Ibn Zohar, Avenzoar. Ibn Sina, Avicenna. El-Petrugi, El-Petragias. So they changed the name. You never think El-Petragias. Never think of a Muslim name. Okay? Our men fear man was the name they used for Abbas ibn Firnas. Al-Hazan for Ibn al-Haytham. Abul Qasas for Zahrawi. You see? Rasis for Razi. See how they changed the names in order to trick people into thinking that these people were Europeans. But they weren't Europeans. They were Muslims who pivoted the whole of civilization in a very important time in the history of humanity. To the point where the Muslims even developed, you could say, the world's oldest degree-giving universities. They were universities throughout history. I'd say one of the oldest, because in ancient Egypt at Karnak, there were universities. But in the way that we have degrees being given, so they would give out this ijaza, this degree. In some cases, they called it bihaq al-riwaya, which means you have the right to report or to teach your teacher's teachings. Bihaq al-riwaya, baccalaureate. So degrees were being given out at al-Qarawiyyin. This is in Morocco, in Fez, Morocco. And this is an actual picture from the university there in what is left of al-Qarawiyyin in Morocco. So this is from the golden age of Islam, and it is an amazing time and amazing achievements that the Muslims made. I want to, at this point, open up the floor to see if there's any questions. This is our pivot this week. It's not a military pivot. It's not a hero coming out to save you, but it is a pivot in knowledge, a pivot in civilization. So the floor is open for any questions that anybody may have.
We have no questions, just people saying salams.
Any comments from people who are online, different parts of the world? Anybody coming in?
Yeah, we have Christopher Colley saying salams. We have a couple other people just saying salams as well.
So as we continue on in this pivot, one of the areas which is of extreme importance to the Muslims was astronomy. And this was a natural thing for Muslims because when we pray facing Qibla. We face Mecca. So if you are east of Mecca, you got to go west. If you're north, you got to face south. So you need directions. So you need to know where the North Star is. You need your direction so you can make your prayers. Also, if you want to make pilgrimage to Mecca, then you got to travel. So you need directions. Okay, and geography, you got to know geography. And so books were being written, achievements were being made in astronomy and in navigation. Okay, and this is a natural thing for the Muslims. It was not any magic or hocus pocus. It was a natural achievement. And some of the astronomical instruments, for instance, the astrolabe, quadrants, sextants, compasses, so many more things that actually happened. These are major achievements done by the Muslims. And surprisingly enough, in astronomy, there's some amazing things. You know how people are so, caught up by the eclipse, the solar eclipse, and they come outside as though we Western people, we can witness this. No, go back, into the golden age of Islam, and you will see that Muslims, they cataloged the maps of the visible stars. They corrected sun and moon tables. The first use pendulum-built observatories. The invention of the sundial was the 11th century. They predicted sunspots, eclipses, comets. See the eclipses. Muslims were predicting the eclipses, just like the scientists predicted today and say it's our civilization and we will go out and we will look at it. So some of the famous astronomers were Ibn Yunus, al-Farghani, al-Battani, al-Bayruni, Ibn Rushd. Amazing achievements that they were making during that time. And so in Surah Yusuf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, in their histories, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, that in their histories there is certainly a lesson for men of understanding. This was a pivot in knowledge. And Allah blessed the Muslims with it. And we today not only need a pivot in our protection of the innocent and the weak who are suffering in Palestine and Sudan and other places, but we also need to make a pivot with science because the earth is being destroyed. How can we use technology to benefit the earth instead of destroying the earth? How can we use wealth to make everybody wealthy instead of only a few? How can we use technology to save life instead of taking life? This is a pivot that is needed now. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would enable Muslims and enlighten people to make this pivot at this critical point in history. So I leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah to have mercy on me and you. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.